My stepdaughter looked me dead in the eye and said the greatest gift I could give her for her wedding was my absence. She told me I was just Robert, the man who wrote the checks, while her real dad was the one who deserved to walk her down the aisle. My wife, the woman I had supported for 18 years, just sat there and let it happen. She didn't say a word. So I did exactly what they asked. I disappeared. But I didn't go quietly. I took my money, I took my house, and I took the entire wedding with me. When they walked into that empty kitchen expecting a champagne toast, all they found was a plastic folding table and a bill for $482,000. What happened next didn't just ruin a wedding. It destroyed their entire world. If you have ever felt used by the people you love, hit that like button right now. And if you are new here, subscribe to the channel, because what I am about to tell you is the truth about how a man can give everything and still be treated like nothing. Let me know in the comments what city you are watching from. I always read them. My name is Robert Caldwell. I am 75 years old. For 40 years, I worked as a general contractor in Seattle. My hands are rough. They are covered in scars from sheetrock knives, lumber splinters, and cold mornings pouring concrete. I earned every single dollar I have by waking up before the sun and working until my back felt like it was on fire. I am not a man who comes from old money. I built my life brick by brick. And for the last 18 years, I thought I was building a family. I was sitting at the head table of the Emerald, one of the most expensive restaurants in downtown Seattle. The chandeliers above us probably cost more than my first truck. This was the rehearsal dinner. The air smelled of expensive perfume and roasted duck. I was the host. That meant I was the one paying for every bottle of wine being opened, every plate of food being served, and every flower arrangement on the tables. My pen hovered over the checkbook. It was a business checkbook, the heavy kind, with the 3-ring binder holes on the side. I looked at the number written on the invoice from the florist. $18,542 for flowers. Flowers that would die in 48 hours. Robert, can you hurry up, please? The photographer is waiting to take the candid shots of the bridal party, and you are ruining the lighting. That was Madison. My stepdaughter. She was 28 years old, beautiful and completely self-absorbed. She didn't look at me. She was looking at her reflection in the back of a spoon, checking her lipstick. She didn't call me Dad. She hadn't called me Dad since she was 12. It was always just Robert. I signed the check. My signature was firm. It was the signature of a man who had signed contracts for multi-million-dollar commercial buildings. But as I tore the check out of the book, I felt a strange heaviness in my chest. Here, I said, holding it out. Madison snatched it from my hand. She didn't say thank you. She didn't smile. She just turned to the wedding planner standing next to her and handed it over like I was an ATM machine that had finally dispensed the cash she was owed. Finally, she huffed, smoothing out her silk dress. This whole day has been so stressful. I need a mimosa. I watched her walk away. I remembered the day I met her. She was 10 years old. She was hiding behind her mother's legs wearing a dirty pink t-shirt. Her biological father, a man named Evan, had left them 2 years prior and never paid a dime of child support. I was the one who taught her how to ride a bike without training wheels. I was the one who sat up with her all night when she had the chicken pox. I was the one who paid for her braces, her first car, and her college tuition. $150,000 for a degree she wasn't even using. But none of that seemed to matter in this room. In this room, I was just the financier. I took a sip of water. It tasted bitter. I looked across the table at Catherine, my wife. She was laughing at something the mother of the groom was saying. Catherine looked elegant in the navy blue gown I had bought her last week. She caught my eye and gave me a quick, tight smile, the kind you give to a servant who has done a good job cleaning the floor. Then she turned back to her conversation. That was when I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Tyler, my future son-in-law. Tyler was 30 years old. He came from a family in Boston that liked to talk about their ancestors coming over on the Mayflower. They didn't have as much money as they pretended to have, but they certainly had the attitude. Tyler was wearing a tuxedo that fit him perfectly. He smelled like expensive cologne and arrogance. "Hey, Robert," Tyler said, his voice low and smooth. "Look, we need to have a quick chat about the logistics for tomorrow." I turned in my chair. "Sure, Tyler. What is it?" "Is there a problem with the catering? I already wrote the check for the prime rib." No, the food is fine," Tyler said, pulling up a chair and sitting backwards on it, trying to look casual. "It is about the seating chart. My parents and I were looking over the layout, and we think it would be better if you sat at table 15. I blinked. Table 15. I knew the layout of the venue perfectly. I should, considering the wedding was happening in the backyard of my own house. My house, which sits on 3 acres of prime land overlooking the water. I had spent the last 3 months renovating the landscaping specifically for this event. "Table 15 is in the back, Tyler," I said, keeping my voice steady. "That is by the kitchen entrance. That is where you put the second cousins and the people you felt obligated to invite from work. I am the father of the bride." Tyler chuckled nervously. He patted my shoulder again. "See, that is the thing, Robert. Technically, you are the stepfather of the bride. And my family, well, the Cabots are very traditional. They place a high value on bloodlines. We have the governor coming and a few partners from my dad's law firm. We just think the head table should be reserved for the immediate biological family. It looks better for the photos. Symmetry. You know, I felt the blood rising in my neck. Symmetry, I had paid $85,000 for this wedding so far. And they wanted to put me next to the swinging kitchen doors. "And there is one more thing," Tyler continued, not noticing the tightening of my jaw. Or maybe he just didn't care. "Regarding the ceremony itself, Madison and I talked about it, and we think it would be incredibly touching if her biological father, Evan, walked her down the aisle." The room seemed to go silent even though the noise of the party continued around us. I stared at him. Evan, the man who disappeared for 18 years. Evan, the man who sent a birthday card with no money in it once every 3 years. Evan, who had only reappeared 2 months ago when he heard Madison was marrying a Cabot. He is her real dad, Robert. Tyler said, shrugging. "It is a big moment for a girl. She wants her real dad. It is just aesthetics. You understand, right? You are a practical guy. You are a contractor. You understand how things need to look right structurally. You are. Well, you are just Robert. You have been great with the financial support, and we totally appreciate that. But Evan looks the part. He has that distinguished look." I looked at my hands, my rough, scarred working man's hands. Then I looked at Tyler's soft, manicured fingers resting on the tablecloth. "Does Madison know you are asking me this?" I asked. Tyler laughed. "It was her idea, Robert. She didn't want to hurt your feelings, so she asked me to break it to you. She thinks you would be more comfortable in the background anyway. You are not really a tuxedo kind of guy, are you? You always look a little uncomfortable in formal wear. We just want everyone to be comfortable." I looked across the room. Madison was standing by the bar holding a glass of champagne. Her biological father, Evan, was standing next to her. He was wearing a rented tuxedo that didn't fit him quite right, but he was laughing, holding court, acting like he was the king of the world. Madison was beaming at him. She looked at him with a level of adoration she had never, not once in 18 years, shown to me. I felt a kick under the table. I looked at Catherine. She had stopped talking to the other guests. She was looking at me, her eyes wide and hard. She had heard everything. She knew exactly what was happening. "Say okay," she mouthed silently. "Do not make a scene." That kick under the table was the moment everything changed. For years I had told myself that Catherine was stuck in the middle. I told myself she was trying to keep the peace between a difficult daughter and a strict stepfather. I made excuses for her. But in that moment, as her sharp heel dug into my shin, I realized the truth. She wasn't a peacekeeper. She was an accomplice. She knew I was being banished to table 15. She knew I was being replaced in the ceremony. She probably helped them plan it. She wanted the money, she wanted the lifestyle, she wanted the prestige of her daughter marrying into the Cabot family, but she was ashamed of the man who paid for it all. I took a deep breath. I looked at Tyler. I looked at the checkbook still sitting on the table. "You are right, Tyler," I said quietly. Tyler smiled, relieved. "I knew you would get it. You are a good guy, Robert. A solid guy." "I am a practical guy," I repeated. I closed the checkbook. I put the cap back on my expensive fountain pen. Inside my chest, the heart of the loving father and husband was breaking into 1,000 pieces. But in its place, the mind of the businessman, the contractor who knows how to demolish a rotting structure, was waking up. They wanted me to be invisible, fine. I would be invisible. They wanted the real dad. They could have him. They wanted me to step aside so they could shine. I would step so far aside they wouldn't even see the ground disappearing beneath their feet until it was too late. I stood up. My knees popped slightly. "Where are you going?" Catherine whispered, grabbing my wrist. Her grip was strong. Her nails dug into my skin. "I just need some air," I said. I pulled my hand away from her. "It is a lot to take in. I will see you at home." "Don't you dare embarrass me," she hissed. I looked down at her. For the first time in 18 years, I saw her clearly. I saw the wrinkles around her eyes that she tried to hide with expensive creams I paid for. I saw the greed in the set of her mouth. "I won't embarrass you, Catherine," I said. "I promise." I walked out of the Emerald. I walked past the valet stand, where my Lexus SUV was parked. I didn't want to drive. I needed to walk. I walked 5 blocks in the cooling Seattle air. I took my phone out of my pocket. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the number for Mr. Harland, my attorney. It was late, but I knew he would answer. Harland had been with me since I started my company, with nothing but a pickup truck and a shovel. I pressed call. Robert Harland answered on the second ring. "Is everything okay?" "It is almost 10 o'clock. "Harland," I said. My voice calm, terrified by how calm I sounded. "I need you to meet me at the office at 6:00 a.m. tomorrow morning. Tomorrow is Saturday, Robert. It is your daughter's wedding day." I stopped walking. I looked up at the skyline of the city I had helped build. "No, Harland," I said. "Tomorrow is just a Saturday. And I need to make some changes to my estate. All of it. I need to sell the house." There was a silence on the other end of the line. "Sell the house to the venue." "Robert, talk to me. What is going on?" "They want me to be just Robert Harland. So I am going to be just Robert. I am going to liquidate everything." I hung up the phone. I stood there on the street corner feeling the wind hit my face. I wasn't sad anymore. The sadness had evaporated in that restaurant when Tyler told me I belonged at table 15. Now there was only clarity. Cold, hard, expensive clarity. I hailed a taxi. "Take me to the Motel 6 on the highway," I told the driver. The driver looked at me in my tuxedo. "The Motel 6, sir?" "Yes," I said. "I need to get used to living simply again. Because by this time tomorrow, my wife and daughter are going to learn a very expensive lesson about what happens when you throw away the man who built the roof over your head." As the taxi pulled away, I didn't look back at the restaurant. I looked forward. I had less than 24 hours to dismantle a life that took me 18 years to build. And I was going to do it with the same precision I used to pour concrete. They wanted a show. I was going to give them a finale they would never forget. But first, I had to go home one last time. I had to get the deed to the house out of the safe before Catherine came home. And I had a feeling that what I would find on her iPad would seal their fate forever. If you think I was right to walk out of that restaurant, type Team Robert in the comments below. You have no idea what I found when I got back to the house that night. It wasn't just disrespect. It was a conspiracy. And it involved a nursing home called Shady Acres. Stay tuned because the real war hasn't even started yet. I followed her into the house. The air inside was warm and smelled of vanilla candles. Madison and Tyler were sitting in the living room on the white leather sectional sofa I had imported from Italy. They had their feet up on the coffee table. Tyler was holding a glass of my best scotch, the 20-year-old single malt I saved for special occasions. He didn't ask if he could have it. He just took it. They stopped talking when we walked in. Madison looked at me, then at her mother. She didn't look guilty. She looked annoyed, like I was an interruption to their evening. So Madison said, taking a sip from her own glass, "Did Mom explain the situation?" I stood in the entryway, still wearing my coat. I felt like a visitor in my own house. "Your mother explained that my hands are too dirty for your wedding photos," I said, keeping my voice level. Madison rolled her eyes. "God, you always have to make it sound so dramatic. It is not about your hands, Robert. It is about the vibe." Tyler swirled the ice in his glass. "Look, Robert, let's cut to the chase. We have been talking while you guys were driving back, and we realized that the seating arrangement at table 15 might be awkward. People might ask questions about why the stepfather is sitting so far away." I felt a tiny spark of hope. Had they realized how disrespectful they were being? Were they going to apologize? So Tyler continued, staring at the amber liquid in his glass. "We think it would be better if you just didn't come at all." The air left the room. I looked at Catherine. She was busy fluffing a pillow, refusing to meet my eyes. I looked at Madison. She was staring right at me. Her chin lifted in defiance. "Excuse me," I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "You heard him," Madison said. "The greatest gift you could give us is your absence. If you are there, it is just going to be confusing. People will wonder who is the real dad and who is just the helper. If you aren't there, we can just say you were taken ill or had an emergency business trip. Then Evan can take his rightful place as the patriarch. It is cleaner that way." The patriarch. The word hung in the air like a bad smell. Evan, who had borrowed $5,000 from me 6 years ago to start a business scheme that failed in a week and never paid me back. Evan, who missed Madison's high school graduation because he was hungover. He was the patriarch. I walked slowly into the living room. My legs felt heavy. I stood in front of them, looking down at the two people who were sipping my liquor and planning to erase me from my own life. I pointed a finger at the floor. "I paid for this floor," I said softly. "I paid for the roof over your heads. I paid $85,000 for the caterer, the band, the flowers, and the tent in the backyard. I paid for your dress, Madison. $6,000 for a dress you are going to wear to walk down the aisle with another man." Madison let out a groan and threw her head back against the sofa cushions. "Here we go," she said to the ceiling. "The money talk. It is always about money with you, isn't it? You think because you write checks you own people." "I don't think I own people," I said, my voice rising slightly. "I think that when a man supports a family for 18 years, when he loves a child as his own, he earns a seat at the table. Not table 15, the main table." Tyler laughed. A short, sharp sound. "Buddy, nobody earns a seat at the Cabot table. You are born there. And let's be honest, you are just the bankroll. You are the logistics guy." Madison sat up and leaned forward, her face twisting into a sneer that made her look exactly like her mother. "Look, Robert, let's be real. You want to know who paid for the wedding?" "You did." "Yes. But do you know why? Because that is the price of admission. That is the fee you pay for getting to pretend you have a family. You paid for my college, great. That was your duty as the man of the house. You paid for the wedding, fantastic. That is what fathers do. Consider it back pay for the last 18 years of me having to tolerate your boring stories and your dirty work clothes." She stood up and walked over to me, standing toe to toe. She poked me in the chest with a manicured finger. "You have paid your dues, Robert," she said, cold and low. "The transaction is complete. We don't need the vendor at the event. We just need the product. So do us a favor. Go on a fishing trip. Go fix a toilet somewhere. Just don't be here tomorrow. Let my real dad have his moment. He is the one who actually understands me. He is the one who has class." I stood there frozen. The concept of back pay echoed in my mind. She viewed every sacrifice I had made, every morning I woke up at 4 a.m., every vacation I skipped to save money as a service fee. I wasn't a father to her. I was a subscription service she was ready to cancel. I looked at Catherine one last time. "Catherine," I said, "are you hearing this? She is kicking me out of my own house on the weekend of her wedding." Catherine finally looked at me. Her eyes were tired. "Robert, please. Just go to a hotel. Do it for me. If you stay, you are just going to make everyone miserable. Tyler's parents are expecting a certain standard. Just go." Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It was the sound of a steel cable finally giving way under too much tension. It was a quiet, final release. I looked at Madison. I looked at Tyler. I looked at my wife. "Okay," I said. Madison blinked, surprised by my sudden surrender. "Okay, yes," I said. "You are right. I am just the vendor. I am just the bankroll. And if the client isn't happy with the service provider, then the service provider should leave." "Exactly," Tyler said, raising his glass in a mock toast. "Smart man. I knew you would get it eventually." I turned around and walked toward the stairs. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears, but my face was stone. "I will pack a bag," I said over my shoulder. "I will be out of your hair in an hour." "Good," Madison called out after me. "And leave the credit card for the honeymoon expenses on the counter before you go. We have a flight to book." I looked at the young man standing in my living room. Tyler was swirling the ice in his glass, looking at me with a mixture of boredom and irritation. He had just told me that I needed to leave my own home, the home I paid for, because my tools were too unsightly for his family. "A Motel 6. I repeated, my voice flat. "You want me to stay at a Motel 6 on the highway?" Tyler shrugged. "It is just for 2 nights, Robert. Look, my parents are staying at the Four Seasons downtown. We cannot have them pulling into the driveway and seeing a table saw in the corner of the garage. It ruins the illusion. We need the garage for the caterers to set up the staging area. And frankly, the house smells like sawdust and solvent. It is fine for you, but it is not the scent profile we want for a Cabot wedding. I already booked the room. I put it on your card, actually. I figured you would want to write it off as a business expense." He smiled as if he had done me a favor. He had used my credit card to book my own exile. I looked at Catherine. This was the moment. This was the final chance for her to stand up and say that this was insane. This was the moment for her to say that her husband of 18 years would not be kicked out of his own bed for a wedding he was paying for. "Catherine," I said. Her name felt heavy on my tongue. She was busy straightening a stack of magazines on the coffee table. She wouldn't look at me. She picked up a copy of Architectural Digest and set it down again, perfectly aligning the edges. "Just go, Robert," she said softly. I waited. I needed her to look at me. "Catherine," I said again, louder this time. "They are kicking me out." She finally looked up. Her eyes were hard and cold, like polished stones. "Nobody is kicking you out," she snapped. "Stop being so dramatic. We are just asking you to make space. You know how stressful this is for Madison. You know how important this weekend is. Why do you have to make everything about you? Just go to the motel. Watch some TV. Get some sleep. You can come back on Sunday morning to help clean up after the tent comes down. We will need someone to power wash the patio. Sunday morning. To clean up. That was my role. I wasn't the father. I wasn't the husband. I was the janitor. I was the wallet. And when I wasn't useful, I was an eyesore. I looked at the woman I had loved. I looked at the daughter I had raised. I looked at the son-in-law who despised me. And suddenly, the anger that had been boiling in my gut turned into something else. It turned into ice. Absolute freezing cold ice. "Okay," I said. Catherine blinked. She had expected a fight. She had expected me to yell. But I didn't yell. I didn't raise my voice. "Okay," I repeated. "I will go pack." I turned my back on them. I walked to the stairs. The staircase was made of white oak. I remembered installing it. I remembered cutting the treads, sanding them by hand until they were smooth as glass. I remembered the smell of the varnish. I remembered carrying Madison up these stairs when she had broken her ankle in soccer camp. I remembered carrying Catherine up these stairs on our 10th anniversary. Every step I took was a memory I was leaving behind. I reached the top of the landing and walked down the hall to the master bedroom. I could hear their voices downstairs. They were laughing again. The tension was gone. The problem me had been solved. I entered the bedroom and closed the door. I didn't lock it. I didn't want them to suspect anything. I walked to the closet and pulled down my old canvas duffel bag. It was stained with oil and dirt from years of visiting job sites. It was a working man's bag. I threw in 2 shirts, a pair of jeans, and my shaving kit. I didn't pack a suit. I wouldn't need a suit where I was going. Then I turned to the wall above the bed. There was a painting there, a watercolor of a lighthouse on a stormy coast. Catherine had bought it at a gallery in Maine 5 years ago. She said it was peaceful. I took the painting down and set it gently on the bedspread. Behind it was the wall safe. I had installed this safe myself. I framed the wall out specifically to hold it. It was fireproof, bolted into the studs with 6-inch lag screws. I spun the dial. The combination was the date I opened my own construction company. 1978. The heavy steel door clicked open. Inside, stacked neatly, was the paperwork of my life. The things that proved I existed. I reached in and took the blue folder on top. This was the deed to the house. I had paid off the mortgage 3 years ago. I hated debt. I had written one final check for $200,000 and felt the weight of the world lift off my shoulders. The house was mine, free and clear. Catherine's name was on the deed as a resident, but the ownership structure was under my living trust. I was the trustee. I had the power to sell. I took the titles to the cars. The Lexus Catherine drove. The BMW Madison drove. My pickup truck. I had paid for all of them. I took my passport. I took the small velvet pouch that held my mother's engagement ring. I had given Catherine a bigger diamond, a modern one, because she said my mother's ring was too old-fashioned. She had never worn this one. I wasn't going to leave it here for the estate sale. I put everything into the side pocket of the duffel bag and zipped it shut. Then I closed the safe and spun the dial. I hung the painting of the lighthouse back on the wall. It looked exactly as it had 5 minutes ago. I looked around the room. I looked at the king-sized bed with the Egyptian cotton sheets I was not allowed to sleep in tonight. I looked at the walk-in closet filled with Catherine's designer clothes. I walked into the bathroom. I took my toothbrush. Then I opened the medicine cabinet. I took my blood pressure medication. I looked at myself in the mirror. I saw an old man. I saw gray hair and wrinkles. I saw tired eyes. But I also saw something else. I saw the man who used to wake up at 4 in the morning to pour concrete in the freezing rain. I saw the man who had built schools and hospitals. I saw a man who was done being a doormat. I turned off the bathroom light. I walked out of the bedroom and down the hall. I didn't look into Madison's old room. I didn't look into the guest room. When I reached the bottom of the stairs, they were still in the living room. Tyler was showing them something on his phone. "I am leaving now," I said. They looked up. "Great," Tyler said. "The reservation is under your name at the Motel 6. It is the one off exit 42. Try not to make too much noise if you come by on Sunday." Catherine stood up and walked over to me. She didn't hug me. She reached out and straightened my collar. "Don't be sulky, Robert," she whispered. "It is unattractive. Just relax for a couple of days. We will see you on Sunday. And please turn your phone off. We don't want you calling in the middle of the ceremony asking where things are." I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had promised to love me in sickness and in health. "Goodbye, Catherine," I said. I didn't say see you later. I didn't say see you Sunday. I said goodbye. She didn't notice the difference. She just patted my chest and turned back to her daughter and her son-in-law. I walked out the front door. The cool night air hit my face. I walked past the Lexus. I walked past Tyler's convertible. I walked to my Ford F-150 pickup truck. It was parked on the street because there was no room in the driveway. I threw my bag onto the passenger seat. I climbed in and started the engine. The diesel engine rumbled to life, a deep, steady sound that I loved. It was the sound of work. It was the sound of honesty. I pulled away from the curb. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I knew what the house looked like. I knew every inch of it. And I knew that by tomorrow afternoon, it wouldn't be my problem anymore. I didn't drive to the Motel 6. I drove toward the city. I had a meeting at 6 a.m. with my lawyer, Mr. Harland. And before that, I had a lot of thinking to do. As I merged onto the highway, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Madison. "Don't forget to transfer the money for the honeymoon flights tonight. We want to book the first-class seats before they are gone." I looked at the message. I felt a laugh bubbling up in my chest. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was a dark, hollow laugh. First-class seats. I tossed the phone onto the seat next to me. "Oh, you are going to get a trip, Madison," I said to the empty cab of my truck. "But it is not going to be first class. And it is certainly not going to be the honeymoon you planned." I pressed down on the accelerator. The truck surged forward. I was 75 years old, homeless for the night and alone. But for the first time in 18 years, I felt free. The demolition had begun. I drove for 20 minutes before the feeling in my gut became too strong to ignore. It started as a small knot of anxiety, the kind you get when you think you left the stove on, but it quickly grew into a twisting, burning sensation that made my hands sweat on the steering wheel. I told myself it was because I had forgotten my blood pressure medication on the bathroom counter. That was the logical excuse. That was the reason I could give if anyone asked why I turned my truck around at the exit for the interstate. But deep down I knew it wasn't about the pills. It was instinct. It was the same instinct that told me when a retaining wall was about to buckle, or when a subcontractor was lying about the grade of copper wire he used. I pulled the truck into a dark side street 2 blocks away from my house. I cut the engine and sat there for a moment in the silence. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of quiet that costs millions of dollars to maintain. I zipped up my jacket and stepped out into the cool night air. I didn't walk on the sidewalk. I walked along the grass line, keeping to the shadows of the hedges I had planted 10 years ago. I felt like a thief. I was prowling around the perimeter of the home I paid for, hiding from the people whose lives I financed. The absurdity of it made my jaw clench so hard my teeth ached. When I reached the backyard, I stopped. The house was blazing with light. Through the large bay windows of the kitchen, I could see them. They weren't cleaning up. They weren't preparing for the wedding. They were celebrating. Tyler was popping the cork on a bottle of vintage Dom Perignon, a bottle I had been saving for my 25th wedding anniversary. The cork flew across the room, and Madison threw her head back, laughing with her mouth wide open. It was a laugh I hadn't seen in years, free and unburdened. Catherine was there too, leaning against the marble island holding a crystal flute. She looked relaxed. Her shoulders were down, her face flushed with excitement. They didn't look like a family stressing over wedding logistics. They looked like a gang of bank robbers who had just cracked the vault and were divvying up the loot. I moved closer, pressing my back against the brick siding. The kitchen window was cracked open a few inches to let in the breeze. "To the phantom," Tyler said, raising his glass. "To the man who isn't there." Madison clinked her glass against his. "To Robert," she said. "The most useful ghost in Seattle." Catherine laughed. A low, throaty sound that chilled my blood. "Don't be mean," she said, though her smile said otherwise. "He did leave without a fuss. I honestly thought he was going to cry." I ducked down and moved toward the back door. I had the key, but I knew the laundry room door sometimes didn't latch properly if you didn't pull it hard. I tried the handle. It turned silently. I slipped inside, the smell of detergent and dryer sheets filling my nose. I stood in the dark laundry room listening to the voices drifting from the kitchen. "Now that the gloomy cloud is gone, we can actually enjoy this party," Madison was saying. I was so afraid he was going to try to make a speech. Can you imagine him standing there with those rough hands talking about hard work and sacrifice? It would have been humiliating. "He is gone now, honey," Catherine soothed. "Relax. I didn't go to the kitchen." I moved silently down the hallway toward my study. The door was ajar. A soft blue light spilled out onto the hardwood floor. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. My study was my sanctuary. It was where I designed my blueprints, where I balanced the checkbooks, where I kept the photos of my parents. But tonight, it felt violated. Someone had been in here. The chair was pulled out, and sitting right in the center of my mahogany desk was Catherine's iPad. It was open. The screen was glowing. I walked over to the desk. I wasn't going to look. I told myself I was just here for the pills. But then a notification banner dropped down from the top of the screen. It was a message from Tyler. Did the old man take the bait? I froze. My hand hovered over the screen. The passcode. I knew her passcode. It was her birthday. I typed it in. The screen unlocked, revealing a group chat that had been active for months. The name of the group chat was Project Freedom. I scrolled up. My heart began to hammer against my ribs, a slow, heavy thudding that seemed to shake my entire body. This wasn't just a conversation about a wedding. This was a dossier. This was a murder plot, not of my body, but of my life. I read the message from Tyler sent 20 minutes ago. "Is the old man gone yet? We need to make sure he stays away until Sunday night. Once the wedding is over, we start phase 2. I talked to the real estate agent today. If we sell the house as is, even with a quick sale, we can get $2.4 million. Split 3 ways that sets us all up." I felt the blood drain from my face. Split 3 ways. Me, the owner, the one who paid for every brick, wasn't part of the equation. I scrolled down to Catherine's reply. "Don't worry about the sale yet," she had written. "We need the power of attorney first. I have been seeding the idea with Dr. Evans that Robert is becoming forgetful. I told him about the rage episodes that never happened. Once we get the dementia diagnosis, I take control of the assets. We can put him in Shady Acres by next month. It is cheap, it is far away, and they don't allow many visitors. He won't know what hit him." I had to grab the edge of the desk to keep from falling. Shady Acres. I knew that place. It was a state-run facility 2 counties over. It was where people went to die when nobody loved them. It smelled of urine and boiled cabbage. My wife, the woman I slept next to every night, the woman I traveled the world with, was planning to lock me away in a warehouse for the discarded elderly so she could cash out my equity. Then I saw Madison's message. Bye, Robert. Thanks for the money, loser. Just make sure the check for the honeymoon clears before you lock him up. I don't want my card declining in the Maldives." A loser. I stared at the word. It pulsated on the screen. I wasn't scared anymore. The fear had evaporated, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. It was the same feeling I got right before I swung a sledgehammer into a dry-walled partition. I knew exactly where the studs were. I knew exactly where to hit to bring the whole wall down. My hands were shaking not from weakness, but from the adrenaline of pure, unadulterated rage. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I opened the camera. I didn't just take one picture. I took pictures of everything. I scrolled up for months. I took pictures of them mocking my clothes. I took pictures of them complaining about my cheapness when I refused to buy a third car. I took pictures of the detailed plan to have Dr. Evans declare me mentally incompetent. "Make sure he drinks the tea tonight," Catherine had written 2 weeks ago. I put a little something in it to make him groggy. If he looks confused in front of friends, it helps our case. I remembered that night. I remembered feeling dizzy. I remembered Catherine helping me to bed, her voice so sweet, so concerned. "You are working too hard, Robert. You need rest." She had been drugging me. She had been poisoning me slowly to build a case for my insanity. I finished taking the photos. I made sure they were backed up to the cloud instantly. Then I carefully placed the iPad back exactly where it had been. I wiped my fingerprints off the screen with my sleeve. I stood in the darkness of my study for one last moment. I looked at the framed photo on the desk. It was taken 10 years ago. Me, Catherine, and Madison at her high school graduation. We looked happy. I looked proud. I picked up the photo. I looked at their smiling faces. Liars. Parasites. I opened the bottom drawer of the desk and dropped the photo inside. I didn't slam the drawer. I closed it softly. I walked out of the study. I walked down the hall past the kitchen where they were still laughing. I could hear Tyler telling a joke about a construction worker who fell into cement. They all roared with laughter. Laugh while you can, I thought. I slipped out the back door and into the night. The rain had started to fall, a cold Seattle drizzle. I walked back to my truck, the water mixing with the sweat on my face. I sat in the driver's seat of my Ford. I looked at the photos on my phone one more time. I had the evidence. I had the motive. And thanks to their arrogance, I had the element of surprise. They thought I was a confused old man on his way to a cheap motel. They thought I was the past. I started the engine. I wasn't going to the motel. I was going to war. And unlike them, I wasn't going to use poison or lies. I was going to use the law. I was going to use the very money they loved so much to choke the life out of their plans. I put the truck in gear. Next stop, the bank. Then the real estate investor. Tomorrow wasn't going to be a wedding day. It was going to be an eviction day. If you have ever discovered a betrayal that made you question your entire reality, tell me in the comments. I read every single one. What I did next might seem cruel to some, but after what I read on that screen, I think you will agree that it was justice. Pure, expensive justice. I drove past the flickering neon sign of the Motel 6. The red light buzzed in the damp night air, illuminating the cracked pavement where Tyler had expected me to sleep. A room there cost $59 a night. For 18 years, I would have stayed there without complaint. I would have told myself that saving $200 on a hotel room was the responsible thing to do, that the money was better spent on Madison's tuition or Catherine's jewelry. But as I watched the motel fade into the rearview mirror, that part of Robert Caldwell died. The man who counted pennies so his ungrateful family could burn through dollars was gone. I merged back onto the highway and headed downtown. I pulled my muddy Ford pickup truck into the circular driveway of the Fairmont Olympic Hotel. The valet, a young man in a crisp uniform, looked at my truck with a moment of hesitation. It was covered in job site dust, and the bed was filled with tarps and toolboxes. But then he saw the look on my face. It was the look of a man who could buy the hotel, not just rent a room. He opened the door for me with a nod of respect. I walked to the front desk. My work boots squeaked on the polished marble floors. I booked the executive suite. $800 a night. I didn't ask for a discount. I handed them my black American Express card, the one Catherine loved to flash at her country club lunches. When I got to the room, I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't shower. I sat in the leather armchair by the window, looking out at the city lights. It was 2 a.m. I took out my phone and dialed Harland. He answered on the 4th ring, his voice thick with sleep. "Robert, it is 2 a.m. Is everything all right?" "Everything is clear, Harland," I said. My voice was steady. "I am not calling to chat. I am calling to give you instructions for a filing." "Robert, can't this wait until Monday?" "No," I said. I told him what I had seen on the iPad. I told him about the text messages. I told him about the plan to declare me incompetent and shove me into shady acres. I told him about the drugs Catherine had been putting in my tea. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Then the sleep vanished from Harland's voice. He was a shark now. "That is criminal conspiracy, Robert. That is attempted fraud." "I know," I said, "but I don't want to file charges yet. I want to hurt them where they live. I want you to draft a revocation of any existing power of attorney effective immediately. And I want you to prepare a new will. If I die tomorrow, Harland, I want every single penny to go to the St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Catherine gets nothing. Madison gets nothing. Not a cent. Not a stick of furniture." "Consider it done," Harland said. "I will have the papers ready for you to sign by noon." I hung up. I slept for 3 hours. It was the deepest sleep I had in years. I woke up at 6 a.m. I showered and put my work clothes back on. I didn't have a suit and I didn't want one. These clothes, the flannel shirt, the jeans, the boots were the clothes that earned the money. They deserved to be worn while I took the money back. I was standing in front of the First National Bank branch at 8:55. I watched the tellers inside unlocking the drawers and turning on the lights. I had been banking here for 30 years. I knew the branch manager, Mrs. Higgins. She waved at me through the glass, smiling. She had no idea that I was about to ruin her branch's deposit goals for the quarter. When the doors opened, I was the first one in. The air smelled of stale coffee and money. "Good morning, Mr. Caldwell, Mrs. Higgins said, coming out of her office. "Are you here to withdraw some cash for the wedding weekend? I heard it is going to be a beautiful ceremony." I looked at her. Mrs. Higgins was a nice woman. I didn't want to be rude, but I didn't have time for pleasantries. "I need to make a withdrawal, Sarah," I said. "But not for the wedding." I sat down at her desk. I pulled out my ID and my debit card. "I want to close the joint checking account," I said. Mrs. Higgins blinked. "The joint account with Catherine?" "Yes," I said. She typed something into her computer. "Mr. Caldwell, that account has a substantial balance, $145,382.19. We usually require both account holders for a total closure." I leaned forward. I knew the banking laws better than she thought. I read the fine print on every contract I signed. "Check the ownership structure, Sarah," I said calmly. "I am the primary account holder. Catherine is a secondary joint owner with survivorship rights. As the primary, I have the right to withdraw funds or close the account unilaterally. Am I correct?" She clicked her mouse a few times, her brow furrowed. She read the screen. Then she looked up at me a little pale. "You are correct," she whispered. "But are you sure? This is a lot of cash to move." "I am not moving it to cash," I said. "I want a cashier's check made out to Robert Caldwell, the full amount. Leave the account open if you have to, but leave the balance at 0.00. She hesitated for a second, then nodded. She printed the check. I watched the machine whir. That sound was better than any symphony. It was the sound of my freedom, $145,000. That was the money Catherine was planning to use to remodel the kitchen after I was sent to the nursing home. That was the money Madison thought was her inheritance. I took the check. It felt warm in my hand. One more thing, I said. The credit cards. Mrs. Higgins sighed. Which one? All of them, I said. The Platinum Amex, the Visa Signature, the MasterCard Reserve. Mr. Caldwell, she said, looking alarmed. Those cards have authorized users. Your wife and your daughter. I see activity on the Amex just this morning. A charge pending for... She squinted at the screen. The bridal salon. $4,000. Reject it, I said. I beg your pardon. Cancel the cards. Sarah. Mark them as lost or stolen if you have to, but I want them dead, right now. I want that charge at the bridal salon to decline. I want the card Catherine is probably handing to a waiter at her spa brunch right now to be worthless plastic. Mr. Caldwell, this is going to cause a significant embarrassment if they are trying to use them, Mrs. Higgins warned. I stood up. I put on my baseball cap, the one with my construction company logo on it. That is the point, Sarah, I said. I watched her type the commands. Click, click, click. I imagined the scene. Catherine at the spa, wrapped in a fluffy white robe, handing the card to pay for her $300 massage. The receptionist swiping it. The frown. The second swipe. I am sorry, Mrs. Caldwell. The card has been declined. It says, report to issuer. Catherine's face turning red. She would pull out the Visa. Declined. The MasterCard. Declined. She would have to use her own debit card. The one connected to her personal account where she kept her bingo winnings. She hated spending her own money. She described her money as her money and my money as our money. Well, today our money just left the building. I walked out of the bank. The sun was breaking through the gray Seattle clouds. I looked at the check in my hand again. Then I looked at my phone. No missed calls yet. It would take a few minutes for the humiliation to set in. I climbed into my truck. I felt lighter, physically lighter. The weight of being the provider, the protector, the endless fountain of cash was gone. Now I was just a contractor with a job to do. I checked my watch. 9:30. The real estate investor, a man named Marcus, who bought houses for cash, was meeting me at a diner in 20 minutes. I had already stripped them of their cash flow. Now I was going to strip them of their shelter. I started the truck. As I pulled out of the parking lot, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from the bank app. Transaction declined, Amex Platinum. The bridal salon. $4,200. Reason account closed. I smiled. A cold, hard smile. Happy wedding day, Madison, I whispered. I drove toward the diner. The demolition was proceeding exactly according to schedule, and I hadn't even swung the wrecking ball yet. I pulled my truck into the parking lot of a 24-hour diner called the Rusty Spoon. It was the kind of place where the coffee was strong enough to strip paint, and the menu was sticky with years of maple syrup. I wasn't there for the food. I was there to meet a man named Marcus. I had found Marcus's number on one of those yellow plastic signs you see stapled to telephone poles near construction sites. We buy ugly houses, cash offers, close in 24 hours. Most people think those signs are scams or at best predatory lenders looking to take advantage of desperate people in foreclosure. And usually they are right. But today I was the one who was desperate. Not for money, but for speed. I needed to turn a $2.4 million asset into liquid cash before my wife could file an injunction to stop me. Marcus was already there, sitting in a corner booth. He didn't look like a high-powered real estate mogul. He looked like a guy who hustled. He was wearing a shiny blue suit that was a little too tight in the shoulders, and he was typing furiously on a laptop. When he saw me approach in my flannel shirt and work boots, he stood up and offered a hand that was surprisingly firm. Mr. Caldwell, he said, I have to be honest with you. When you called and gave me the address, I thought it was a prank. I looked it up on Zillow. That is a waterfront estate. We usually buy meth labs and houses with holes in the roof. I sat down and signaled the waitress for coffee. It is not a prank, Marcus, I said. The house is in perfect condition. I put the roof on myself 5 years ago. Copper plumbing, hardwood floors, sub-zero appliances. Marcus looked confused. He closed his laptop halfway. Then why are you calling me? If you list that house with a broker, you could get 2.5, maybe 2.6 million in this market. Bidding war territory. I took a sip of the black coffee. It burned my tongue, and the pain felt good. It kept me focused. I don't have time for a bidding war, I said. I don't have time for open houses. I don't have time for inspections or contingencies or waiting 45 days for a buyer's mortgage to clear. I need to sell the house today, right now, and I need the money in my account before the banks close. Marcus leaned back in the booth. He looked at me with a mixture of suspicion and greed. I recognized that look. It was the look of a man who sees a golden goose but is afraid it might bite him. Is there a lien on the property? He asked. Is it a crime scene? No liens, I said. I pulled the deed out of my heavy canvas jacket and slid it across the sticky table. It is free and clear. I am the sole trustee. I have the legal right to sell. As for a crime scene, not yet. But there has been a theft of 18 years of my life. I didn't explain further. I didn't tell him about the wedding or the iPad or the nursing home plot. He didn't need to know. I want 1.8 million, I said. Marcus choked on his water. Excuse me. 1.8, I repeated. I knew the number was low. It was $600,000 below market value. $600,000 was a lot of money. It was more than most people earned in a decade. But I looked at it differently. That $600,000 was the price of the weapon. It was the cost of the ammunition I needed to blow their plan to smithereens. If I waited to get full price, Catherine would have time to file for divorce and freeze the assets. Then she would get half. Half of 2.4 million is 1.2 million. By selling it now for 1.8, I was actually keeping more money for myself than if I played by the rules. Sometimes you have to burn a little cash to save the fortune. 1.8 is a steal, Marcus whispered. He was doing the math in his head. He could flip the house next week and make $500,000 profit without lifting a finger. There are conditions, I said. He nodded, eager now. Anything. What are the conditions? Condition 1, I said, holding up a finger. The sale happens now. Electronic wire transfer. 80% today, immediately. The remaining 20% upon physical vacancy. Done, Marcus said. I have a line of credit with hard money lenders. I can trigger the wire in 10 minutes. Condition 2, so I continued. And this is the non-negotiable one. Possession is immediate. I will hand you the keys today. But I need you to agree that the house must be completely vacated by tomorrow at 12 p.m. noon. Marcus frowned. Tomorrow is Saturday. I know, I said. At 12 p.m. tomorrow, I want you to take possession. I want you to change the locks. I want you to put your sign in the yard. And if there is anyone left on the property after 12 p.m., I want you to treat them as trespassers. Marcus looked at me. He was starting to piece it together. He realized this wasn't just a real estate transaction. This was a revenge plot. He looked at the deed again, then he looked at my face. He saw the cold determination in my eyes. He saw a man who had nothing left to lose. Is the house occupied? He asked cautiously. Currently, yes, I said. By my soon-to-be ex-wife and some house guests. But do not worry. I will ensure the property is empty of personal effects. Anything left behind after noon tomorrow, you can keep or throw in a dumpster. Consider it a bonus. Marcus tapped his fingers on the table. He was weighing the risk. On one hand, he had to deal with a potentially messy eviction. On the other hand, he was getting a $2 million mansion for pennies on the dollar. Greed won. Greed always wins. I have a digital notary service on my iPad, Marcus said, opening his laptop again. We can do the closing right here. I will call my lender. I watched him work. I watched him upload the deed. I watched him draft the purchase agreement. I read every word on the screen. Seller agrees to transfer all rights, title, and interest. Buyer takes possession at 12:00 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Property sold as is. When the signature box appeared, I didn't hesitate. I used my finger to sign Robert Caldwell on the glass screen. It looked just like the signature I had used on the check for the flowers last night. But this signature felt different. This signature felt like pulling the pin on a grenade. Okay, Marcus said, sweating slightly. The wire is initiated. It is a Fed wire, so it clears instantly. Check your account. I pulled out my phone. I opened the banking app, the same app that showed a balance of $0 an hour ago. I refreshed the screen. Pending deposit $1,440,000. The 80%. It was done. The house was gone. The place where I had barbecued on the 4th of July, the place where I had taught Madison to drive in the driveway, the place where I had thought I would grow old with Catherine. It was no longer my home. It was just an address owned by an LLC called Quick Flip Properties. I felt a strange hollowness in my chest, but it was quickly filled by the rush of adrenaline. I had the money. I had the power. Here's the key, I said, sliding the brass key across the table. It is the master key. It opens the front door, the back door, and the garage. Marcus picked it up like it was a gold nugget. What about the furniture? He asked. It is yours, I said. The white leather sofa from Italy, the dining table, the 60-inch television. Keep it, sell it, burn it, I don't care. I stood up. I tossed a $20 bill on the table for the coffee I barely drank. One more thing, Marcus, I said, looking down at him. When you come tomorrow at noon, bring a big crew, and maybe bring a security guard. The previous tenants can be dramatic. Marcus grinned. For $600,000 in equity, Mr. Caldwell, I will bring the National Guard if I have to. I walked out of the diner. The sun was fully up now. It was Friday morning, the day before the wedding. I climbed into my truck and checked my phone again. No texts from Catherine. She probably thought I was sulking in the motel room. She probably thought she had won. She was probably sitting in my kitchen right now drinking coffee from my mug, looking out at the water, planning how she was going to redecorate once she kicked me into the nursing home. She didn't know that the floor she was standing on didn't belong to us anymore. She didn't know that she was technically trespassing on Marcus's property. I started the engine. I had 4 hours before the moving crew I hired would arrive. I had to time this perfectly. I needed to get in, get my things, and get out before Catherine and Madison returned from their dress fitting. I put the truck in gear. I wasn't just a man driving a truck anymore. I was a ghost haunting a life that used to be mine. And I was about to perform my final act. I drove back toward the house that was now a ticking time bomb set to explode at exactly 12 o'clock tomorrow. If you think selling the house for under market value was crazy, tell me in the comments. But remember, peace of mind is expensive and revenge. Well, revenge is priceless. Wait until you see what I did with the furniture before I left. You are not going to believe the surprise I left in the kitchen. I sat in my truck in the parking lot of a hardware store. I needed to be somewhere familiar, somewhere that smelled of lumber and steel to do what I had to do next. On the passenger seat beside me sat a thick white binder. It was the wedding Bible. Catherine had carried this binder around for 6 months like it was the nuclear codes. She guarded it with her life. But she had made one fatal mistake. She had left it in the back seat of my truck 3 days ago after we went to pick up the custom-printed napkins. She had forgotten it was there. And now it was the instruction manual for her destruction. I opened the binder. Inside were the contracts. Every single one of them had my signature at the bottom. Robert Caldwell, not Catherine, not Madison, not Tyler. Me. In the eyes of the law, and more importantly, in the eyes of the vendors, I was the client. I was the boss. And the boss was about to fire everyone. I took a sip of lukewarm coffee from my thermos and picked up my phone. I started with the most expensive item on the list, the catering. The company was called Exquisite Tastes. They were charging me $120 a plate for 200 guests, plus service fees, plus gratuity, plus a fee for cutting the cake. I dialed the number. A woman answered on the second ring. Exquisite Tastes, this is Monica. How can I help you? Hello, Monica. This is Robert Caldwell. I am the father of the bride for the wedding at the Caldwell estate tomorrow. Oh, Mr. Caldwell. Monica's voice was bright and chirpy. We are so excited for tomorrow. Chef is prepping the lobster bisque right now. We actually just had a quick question about the vegetarian count. Did you want to— I am canceling the order, Monica. I interrupted. There was a silence on the line. A long, confused silence. I could hear pots clanging in the background. I am sorry, I think the line cut out. Monica laughed nervously. It sounded like you said you were canceling. I did, I said. My voice was calm. I was reading the termination clause in the contract in front of me. I am invoking my right to cancel services effective immediately. Do not bring the food. Do not bring the staff. Do not bring the champagne. But, Mr. Caldwell, the wedding is in 24 hours. Monica's voice rose an octave. We have already bought the ingredients. The prime rib is marinating. The staff is scheduled. You have paid a 50% deposit of $15,000. If you cancel now, you lose that deposit. It is non-refundable. I know, I said. Keep it. Keep it, she squeaked. Yes. Keep the $15,000. Consider it a donation to your kitchen. But I am not paying the remaining balance of $15,000 that is due upon delivery. And I do not want your trucks on my property. If they show up, they will be turned away. Mr. Caldwell, this is highly irregular. Does your wife know about this? Does the bride know? The contract is in my name, Monica, I said, hardening my tone. I am the one who signed the check. I am the one telling you to stop. If you show up tomorrow, I will consider it a breach of my instructions, and I will not pay the balance. Do you understand? Yes, I understand. But the food— Give it to a homeless shelter, I said. Feed people who will actually appreciate it. Goodbye, Monica. I hung up. I took a red marker from my pocket and drew a thick line through the catering page. That was $15,000 saved. Yes, I lost $15,000, but I stopped $15,000 from leaving my pocket. In the construction business, we call that stopping the bleed. Next was the florist. Petals and promises. I dialed. This conversation was shorter. The owner, a man named David, tried to argue with me. He told me the imported orchids from Thailand had just arrived. He told me I was ruining art. David, I said, cutting him off. I don't care about the art. I care about the invoice. I paid you an $18,000 deposit. Keep it. The remaining balance of $12,000 stays in my bank account. Do not deliver the flowers. But what am I supposed to do with 2,000 white roses? David shouted. Send them to the hospital, I said. Send them to the nursing home in the next county. I am sure the residents at Shady Acres would love them. I hung up before he could respond. The mention of Shady Acres gave me a grim satisfaction. Catherine wanted to send me there. Well, she could send her flowers there instead. I turned the page. The band. The Swing Kings. A 12-piece orchestra that Tyler insisted on because a DJ was too pedestrian. I called the band leader. Don't come, I said. Mr. Caldwell. We turned down 2 other gigs for this date, the band leader said, sounding angry. And you have a non-refundable deposit of $5,000 to comfort you, I replied. Enjoy your Saturday off. Watch a ball game. Just don't come to my house. I was on a roll. I was slashing through the budget like a machete through tall grass. The photographer, the videographer, the rental company for the linens and the gold-rimmed plates. I called them all. I was polite, but I was immovable. I accepted the loss of the deposits without blinking. I did the math in my head as I worked. I had spent about $45,000 in deposits over the last 6 months. That money was gone, burned. But the final payments, the checks I was supposed to hand out tomorrow, totaled nearly $48,000. I had just saved myself $48,000. But more importantly, I had ensured that tomorrow there would be no music, no food, no flowers, no pictures. There was one call left. The most important one. The tent company. The tent was already up. It was a massive white structure in my backyard, with silk draping and crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceiling. It had taken a crew of 6 men 2 days to set it up. I called the owner, a guy I had done business with before on commercial jobs. His name was Frank. Frank, it is Robert, I said. Hey, Robert, Frank boomed. The tent looks spectacular, doesn't it? My guys outdid themselves. We are just coming by tomorrow morning to do the final safety check on the heaters. Frank. I need you to take it down, I said. There was a pause. What, take it down, Frank? Today. Right now. Robert, are you drunk? The wedding is tomorrow. There is no wedding, Frank, I said. And more importantly, I sold the house this morning. The new owner takes possession tomorrow at noon. He wants the yard clear. You sold the house? Yes. Look, Frank, I know this is a hassle. I know you usually charge for emergency takedowns. Whatever the overtime rate is for your crew, double it. I will pay it. But that tent needs to be gone by sunset. Frank sighed. He knew I was a man of my word. He knew I always paid my bills. Okay, Robert, if you are serious, I can get a crew out there in an hour, but it is going to cost you an extra $3,000. Do it, I said. And Frank, yeah. Leave the dance floor, I said. The dance floor. Yeah, the plywood subfloor you laid down on the grass. Leave it. I need a flat surface to stack some boxes on. I hung up. I sat back in my seat. The silence in the truck was heavy. I looked at the binder. It was full of red lines. It was a graveyard of contract. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't regret. It was relief. For 18 years, I had been the man who made things happen. I was the fixer. If the sink broke, Robert fixed it. If the car made a noise, Robert fixed it. If Madison needed tuition, Robert paid it. I had built my entire identity around being the provider, and they had used that identity to shackle me. They thought I couldn't stop providing because it was who I was. They thought I was addicted to being needed. They were wrong. I wasn't addicted to being needed. I was addicted to building things. And sometimes to build something new, you have to demo the old structure. You have to strip it down to the studs. You have to rip out the rot. I looked at the dashboard clock. It was 11 a.m. Frank's crew would be at the house in an hour to rip down the tent. That would be the first visual sign that something was wrong. But Catherine and Madison were at the spa until 1. They wouldn't see it happen. They would come home to a crater where their fairy tale was supposed to be. But I wasn't done yet. I had the money. I had sold the house. I had canceled the wedding. But there was still the matter of the stuff inside the house. I started the truck. The engine roared to life. I had 1 hour before the movers arrived. I needed to go back to the house one last time. I needed to get my tools. I needed to get the few things that actually mattered to me. And I needed to prepare the final surprise for the kitchen. I thought about the $45,000 I had just lost in deposits. It was a lot of money. It was a luxury car. It was a down payment on a rental property. But as I pulled out of the parking lot, I realized it was the best money I had ever spent. It wasn't a loss. It was a severance package. I was firing my family, and $45,000 was the cost of buying my dignity back. I drove toward the house imagining the look on Tyler's face when the band didn't show up. I imagined Madison screaming when she realized there were no flowers. But what I was about to do to the inside of the house, that was going to be the masterpiece. I turned up the radio. A country song was playing about a man losing his dog and his truck. I laughed. I still had my truck, and honestly, I was happier than the guy in the song. I was coming for you, Catherine, and I was bringing cardboard boxes. The moving truck was a beast of a machine, a 40-foot diesel giant that blocked the entire street. When it hissed to a halt in front of my house at 12:30 in the afternoon, the neighbors peered out from behind their curtains. They were probably expecting a delivery of wedding supplies, maybe the white folding chairs or the ice sculptures. They had no idea they were about to witness an extraction. I walked out to meet the foreman, a burly guy named Mike, who looked like he could lift a refrigerator with one hand. He had a crew of 4 men with him, all wearing uniforms that said Rapid Relocation. I had paid extra for the premium service, the kind where they pack everything for you. But today, the instructions were going to be different. "Mr. Caldwell?" Mike asked, wiping his hands on his pants. "We are here to pack up the whole house, right? Destination is storage, not exactly." "Mike," I said. I pointed at the house. "This is a surgical operation. I want you to look at me. I want you to look at my clothes. Flannel shirt, jeans, work boots." Mike looked me up and down, confused. "Okay. I want you to go into that house and take only the things that look like they belong to a man who works with his hands," I said. "If it is a tool packet, if it is a book about history or engineering packet, if it is a piece of clothing that smells like sawdust or diesel packet." There are some framed photos of an old couple in the study. "Those are my parents. Pack them with care. Everything else, everything that looks expensive, shiny, or fragile, stays behind." Mike scratched his head. "You mean we leave it in the house?" "No," I said, and my voice was as hard as the concrete driveway. "I want you to pack the expensive stuff into the cheapest cardboard boxes you have. Don't use bubble wrap. Don't use tissue paper. Just throw it in. Then take those boxes and stack them on the curb." "The curb?" Mike asked, his eyes widening. "Like, for the garbage truck?" "Like for the garbage truck," I confirmed. "Or for the neighbors? Or for the raccoons?" "I don't care. Just get it out of my house." The crew went to work. I stood in the hallway and directed traffic. It was a massacre of luxury. I watched 2 movers carry armfuls of Catherine's designer clothes out of the master closet. These were dresses I had paid thousands of dollars for, silk blouses she wore to charity luncheons, where she bragged about her generous husband. The movers didn't treat them like couture. They stuffed them into rough brown boxes like they were old rags. I saw a Chanel jacket, the one she wore when she told me I needed to work harder to afford her lifestyle, get crumpled into a ball and shoved next to a pair of muddy gardening shoes. Then came the shoes. The Louboutins. The Jimmy Choos. The ones with the red bottoms that cost more than my first car. I heard the clatter as they were tossed into a box without separation. Leather scraped against leather. Heels snapped against buckles. It was the sound of money being turned into debris. I walked into Madison's room. It was a shrine to her ego. Posters of herself, trophies for participation, and piles of clothes she had worn once and discarded. In the corner, hanging in a protective plastic bag, was the spare wedding dress. It was a reception dress, a shorter, flirty number whom she planned to wear for the dancing portion of the night. It had cost $4,000. A young mover reached for it delicately. "Should I hang this one in a wardrobe box, sir?" he asked. "It looks like a wedding dress." I looked at the white lace. It represented everything Madison was: shallow, expensive, and ultimately not my problem. "Box it," I said. "But sir, it will wrinkle." "Fold it in half and shove it in a dish barrel," I commanded. "It is going to the curb." The kid looked terrified, but he did it. He took the dress, folded it clumsily, and stuffed it into a box meant for kitchen plates. I watched the white fabric disappear into the darkness of the cardboard. We moved through the house like locusts. I went to the garage and reclaimed my life, my table saw, my drill press, my collection of vintage hand planes. These were my friends. These were the tools that had built this life, and they were the only things loyal to me. I watched the movers wrap them carefully in heavy blankets. They understood the value of a good tool. They treated my saw with more respect than they treated Catherine's jewelry box. When the personal items were cleared, we started on the house itself. I had sold the house, but the contract said fixtures were included. However, I knew the definition of a fixture very well. A light bulb is a consumable. A curtain is a window treatment. I set up my ladder in the living room. The ceiling was 20 feet high. I climbed up and unscrewed every single LED bulb from the recessed lighting. I had installed these. They were high-efficiency dimmable bulbs that cost $12 each. I wasn't leaving them. I dropped them into a bag. Then I took down the curtains. These were custom-made velvet drapes, heavy and lined with silk. I ripped them off the rods. The sound of the hooks tearing from the fabric was satisfying. I threw the heavy velvet piles onto the floor. "Put those on the curb too," I told Mike. By 3 o'clock, the house was unrecognizable. It wasn't a home anymore. It was a hollow shell. The walls were bare, leaving pale squares where pictures used to hang. The floors were dusty. The windows were naked, letting in the harsh afternoon light that revealed every scuff and scratch on the floorboards. Outside, the sidewalk looked like a landfill for the rich and famous. There were 50 boxes stacked haphazardly. A Hermes Birkin bag was poking out of the top of one, exposed to the elements. A pair of diamond earrings Catherine had left on the nightstand was likely rattling around in the bottom of a box filled with old magazines. It was a pile of wealth that looked like trash because without the love and respect to sustain it, that is all it ever was. I paid Mike in cash. I gave each of the movers a $100 tip. "You guys did good work," I said. "Fast work." Mike looked at the pile on the curb, then at the empty house, then at me. "Sir, if you don't mind me asking, is your family coming back?" I looked at the pile. "My family is in the truck, Mike," I said, pointing to the boxes of tools. "That pile on the curb, that is just overhead." The truck drove away, leaving me alone in the silence. I walked through the rooms one last time. My footsteps echoed loudly on the hardwood. I went to the kitchen. This was the heart of the house. This was where I had cooked breakfast on Sunday mornings. This was where Catherine had sat drinking wine while I did the dishes. The granite countertops were bare. The refrigerator was empty. I had even taken the ice cube trays. I walked out to my truck and grabbed the 2 items I had saved for last. I brought in a white plastic folding table. It was cheap, wobbly, and stained with paint. I had used it on job sites to hold blueprints. I set it up right in the center of the kitchen island's footprint. It looked ridiculous in the middle of the expansive room, a tiny island of poverty in a sea of emptiness. Then I took the envelope. It was a thick manila envelope. Inside were the copies of the receipts. The receipt for the wedding cancellation. The receipt for the house sale. The receipt for the nursing home inquiry I had found in Catherine's files. And the printout of the text messages. I placed the envelope in the exact center of the plastic table. I took a black permanent marker and wrote one word on the outside of the envelope in big block letters. Payoff. I stepped back. The scene was perfect. The empty house. The pile of rejected luxury outside. The single cheap table with the final bill. I checked my watch. It was 4 p.m. Catherine and Madison would be finishing their late lunch after the spa. They would be here in 30 minutes. I walked to the front door. I stepped out and locked it with the master key I had given to the investor. I slid the key under the doormat. It wasn't my key anymore. I walked down the driveway past the mountain of boxes on the curb. A light rain was starting to fall. I saw a drop of water hit the silk of Madison's spare wedding dress, where the box flap had come open. I didn't close the box. I climbed into my truck and started the engine. I didn't look back. I didn't feel sad. I felt clean. I felt like I had just finished a demolition job and the site was finally cleared, ready for something new to be built. But I wouldn't be the one building here. I drove to the end of the block and parked around the corner. I wasn't leaving yet. I needed to see it. I needed to witness the moment they realized that the bank of Robert was closed forever. I turned off the engine and waited. The rain got heavier, soaking the cardboard boxes on the curb, turning their precious belongings into a soggy, sorry mess. 10 minutes later, the white Mercedes limo turned onto the street. I sat in the cab of my truck with the engine off and the windows cracked just enough to let the sound in. The rain had turned into a steady Seattle drizzle, the kind that soaks into your bones. I had a clear line of sight to the front gates of the property. I checked my watch. It was 9 a.m. on Saturday. The ceremony was scheduled for 4 p.m, but the hair and makeup team was supposed to arrive at 10. The family, however, was early. A white stretch Hummer limousine, the kind that screams new money and bad taste, turned the corner. It was massive, taking up the entire width of the residential street. I watched it slow down as it approached the driveway. I could see the silhouette of the driver turning his head, probably confused by the mountain of sodden cardboard boxes stacked on the curb. But he didn't stop at the boxes. He drove right up to the main gate. The brake lights flared red. The limo stopped. I leaned forward, resting my chin on the steering wheel. This was it. The back door of the limo flew open. Madison stepped out first. She was wearing a white silk robe with the word bride embroidered in gold sequins across the back. She was holding a bottle of champagne. She looked ready to party. She looked ready to be the queen of the day. Then she saw the chain. I had wrapped a heavy-duty steel chain through the wrought iron bars of the gate and secured it with a padlock the size of a fist. But the chain wasn't what made her drop the champagne bottle. It was the sign. I had hammered a wooden stake into the ground right in front of the gate. The sign was bright red with white block letters. Sold. Underneath it, in smaller but equally aggressive letters, was another sign. Private property. No trespassing. Violators will be prosecuted. I saw the bottle hit the asphalt. It didn't break, it just rolled away into the gutter. Madison stood there, her mouth hanging open. Catherine climbed out next, looking wobbly in her high heels. Then Tyler. Tyler looked annoyed. He said something to the driver, pointing at the gate, probably ordering him to open it. The driver shook his head. I could see the body language. He wasn't going to ram a gate for a $300 tip. Tyler marched up to the gate. He grabbed the iron bars and shook them. The chain rattled loudly, a metallic clanking sound that echoed in the quiet morning. He punched in the code on the keypad. Nothing happened. I had cut the power to the gate motor from the breaker box before I left. They were locked out. I watched them panic. It started slow with confusion, and then it accelerated into chaos. Madison was screaming now. I couldn't hear the exact words from this distance, but I could see her gesturing wildly at the house. Catherine was on her phone, frantically dialing. My phone sat silent on the passenger seat. I had blocked their numbers hours ago. Tyler did something stupid then. He tried to climb the gate. He was wearing expensive loafers and dress slacks. He got one foot on the crossbar, slipped, and nearly impaled himself on the decorative spikes. He fell back onto the wet pavement, ruining his pants. Finally, they found the side pedestrian gate. I had locked that too, but the latch was old. Tyler kicked it. Once. Twice. On the third kick, the wood splintered and the gate swung open. They rushed through like a herd of panicked animals. I picked up my binoculars. I wanted to see their faces when they reached the backyard. They ran around the side of the house toward the garden where the ceremony was supposed to be held. They were expecting a white wonderland. They were expecting a 4,000-square-foot marquee tent with silk lining and crystal chandeliers. They were expecting tables set with fine china and thousands of imported orchids. What they found was mud. The yard was a disaster zone. The tent crew had done exactly what I paid them to do. They had ripped everything out. The heavy trucks had churned the wet lawn into a brown sludge. The only thing left was the plywood subfloor of the dance floor sitting there like a raft in a swamp. There were no chairs, no altar, no flowers, just wet plywood and mud. I saw Madison fall to her knees. She didn't care about the mud ruining her white robe. She just knelt there in the sludge looking around the empty yard. She was spinning in circles looking for the tent, looking for the wedding. It was gone. It was like it had never existed. Tyler was running toward the back door of the house. He tried the handle. Locked. He banged on the glass with his fist. Open the door. I could hear him screaming now, his voice carried on the wind. Open the damn door. He looked around, found a heavy garden stone, and smashed the glass panel of the French door. The sound of shattering glass was sharp and brutal. He reached in, unlocked the door, and shoved it open. They all poured into the house. I lowered the binoculars. I didn't need them to know what was happening inside. I knew the acoustics of that house. I had built it. Without furniture, without rugs, without curtains to dampen the sound, every footstep would sound like a gunshot. Every voice would echo. I imagined them standing in the living room, the great room with the 20-foot ceilings. It was empty. The white leather sofa was gone. The grand piano was gone. The 60-inch television was gone. Even the light bulbs were gone, leaving dark holes in the ceiling like empty eye sockets. The house wasn't just empty. It was dead. I imagined the sound of Madison's heels clicking on the bare hardwood as she ran up the stairs to her bedroom. She was looking for her dress. The dress she planned to change into. The jewelry she had left on her dresser. I waited. Then I heard it. It was a scream that tore through the walls of the house and reached me all the way down the street. It wasn't a scream of fear. It was a scream of pure materialistic loss. My things. That was Madison. Then I saw Tyler burst out of the front door. He was holding his phone, his face red with rage. He was pacing back and forth on the porch. I cracked my window a little more to listen. "What do you mean canceled?" he was shouting into the phone. "I am standing here. The wedding is in 6 hours." He was calling the planner, or maybe the caterer. "No, I didn't cancel it," he yelled. He listened for a moment, then he went silent. He froze. "Mr. Caldwell canceled it," he repeated. His voice was quieter now, shaken. "He signed the contract. He has the right." He lowered the phone slowly. He looked at the phone screen as if it had betrayed him. Then he looked at the house. He looked at the sold sign on the gate. The pieces were falling into place. The missing tent. The locked gate. The empty house. The cancellation. It wasn't a mistake, it wasn't a prank, it was an eviction. Catherine came out onto the porch next. She looked smaller than I had ever seen her. She was holding onto the doorframe for support. She wasn't screaming. She was staring at the driveway, at the spot where her Lexus usually sat. It wasn't there. They stood there on the porch of the empty house, the three of them. The queen, the princess, and the prince. But they had no castle. They had no subjects. And most importantly, they had no treasury. I watched Madison run out to join them. She was hysterical. She grabbed Tyler by the lapels of his jacket and shook him. "Fix this!" she screamed. "Fix this right now! People are coming. The governor is coming!" Tyler shoved her away. "There is nothing to fix, Madison," he shouted back. "It is gone. He canceled it. He sold the house." He sold the house, Madison shrieked. He can't sell the house. It is my house. It is his house, you idiot, Tyler yelled. He pays for everything, and he took the money and ran. He took the money. That phrase seemed to hang in the air. They stood in silence for a moment, the rain soaking them to the skin. Then, as if guided by a single terrible thought, they all turned and looked back inside the house. They realized there was one place they hadn't checked yet. The kitchen. The place where the family business was always conducted. The place where the checks were signed. I watched them run back inside. I took a sip of my coffee. It was cold, but it tasted like victory. I knew exactly what they were about to find. I knew exactly where I had placed the table, and I knew that the envelope sitting on that plastic surface was going to hurt them more than the mud or the missing flowers. The envelope contained the truth, and the truth, as they say, will set you free. But first, it will destroy you. I put the truck in gear. I wanted to be closer for the finale. I rolled the truck forward slowly, stopping just across the street from the gate. I wanted to see them when they came out with that envelope. I wanted them to see me. The stage was set. The actors were in position, and the final act was about to begin. I turned the key in the back door lock. The mechanism clicked loudly in the silence of the empty house, a sound like a pistol hammer being cocked. I pushed the door open and stepped into the kitchen. They froze. Catherine, Madison, and Tyler were standing in a tight triangle near the island, or rather where the island used to be before the granite had been stripped of every appliance and accessory. They spun around to face me. I wasn't wearing the tuxedo they wanted me to be ashamed of. I wasn't wearing the contractor flannel I had worn earlier to move the boxes. I was wearing my fishing gear. A waterproof vest with pockets full of lures, comfortable khaki cargo pants, and a hat that had seen better days. I looked like a man who was ready to spend a quiet afternoon on the lake, not a man who was walking into the wreckage of a family. Robert Catherine screamed. The sound tore through the empty room, bouncing off the bare walls and magnifying her hysteria. She rushed toward me, her heels clacking violently on the hardwood. Her face was a mask of running mascara and red blotches. She looked like a woman who was watching her life burn down and trying to blow out the fire with her breath. "Are you insane?" she shrieked, stopping just inches from my face. She raised a hand as if to slap me, but something in my eyes made her stop. She saw something she hadn't seen in 18 years. She saw a stranger. "You sold the house. You canceled the wedding. Do you have any idea what you have done? The governor is on his way. Tyler's parents are landing in an hour. You have humiliated us." I didn't blink. I didn't step back. I simply walked around her as if she were a piece of furniture that had been left behind by the movers. I walked to the center of the room, to the cheap white plastic folding table I had set up earlier. It looked pathetic in the middle of the grand room, but it was sturdy. It held the truth. I placed my hand on the manila envelope marked payoff. "I didn't do this. Catherine," I said, my voice calm and low. "You did." Madison ran forward then. She was still in her white silk robe, the one that said bride on the back. It was stained with mud at the hem from where she had fallen in the yard. Her hair, which had been perfectly styled an hour ago, was starting to frizz in the damp air. "You ruined my life," she screamed, grabbing the edge of the plastic table. "Where is my dress? Where is my jewelry?" "You thief. I am going to call the police. Go ahead," I said. I pulled a chair out from the table, a cheap metal folding chair, and sat down. I looked up at them. "Call the police. Tell them that the owner of the house removed his personal property and sold his asset. Tell them that the man who paid for the dress decided to return it. See what they say." Tyler stepped forward. He was trying to maintain his composure, trying to look like the Cabot scion he claimed to be, but his suit was wet and his eyes were darting around the empty room like a trapped rat. "Look, Robert," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "We can fix this. You made a point. Okay, point taken. You felt disrespected. We apologize. But you have to undo the sale. You have to call the vendors back. We can still salvage the reception if we move fast. Just tell us what you want. You want to sit at the head table, fine. You want to give a speech, fine. Just fix it. I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. You think this is a negotiation, Tyler? I asked. I picked up the envelope. This isn't a negotiation. This is a receipt. I opened the clasp of the envelope. I pulled out a stack of papers. On top was a spreadsheet I had printed out the night before. I slid it across the plastic table toward them. This is an itemized invoice for the last 10 years, I said. I broke it down for you. Madison's college tuition, her car, the 3 vacations to Europe, the legal fees for that DUI she got when she was 22. The nose job, she said, was for a deviated septum. And for you, Catherine, the jewelry, the clothes, the spa treatments, the allowance I gave you every month. They stared at the paper. The total is at the bottom, I said. $482,000. That is just the discretionary spending. That doesn't include the roof over your heads or the food in your stomachs. That is almost $500,000 of my sweat and blood that I gave you, because I thought we were a family. I watched Madison's eyes scan the numbers. She didn't look grateful. She looked offended that I had kept count. So what, she spat. That is what fathers do. You can't ask for a refund on raising a child. I am not asking for a refund. Madison, I said, I am telling you that the account is closed. The balance has been paid in full. And since you two made it very clear last night that I am just a wallet to you, I decided to close the wallet. I reached into the envelope again. This time I pulled out a document with a blue cover. I slid it toward Catherine. And this, I said, is for you. Catherine looked at the document. Her hands were trembling so hard she could barely pick it up. She read the title. Petition for Dissolution of Marriage. You are divorcing me, she whispered. Her voice broke. Over a seating chart, Robert. We have been married for 18 years. You are throwing it all away because your feelings got hurt. I stood up. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. I am not throwing it away because my feelings got hurt. Catherine, I am throwing it away because you tried to kill me. The room went deadly silent. Even the rain outside seemed to stop. Kill you? Catherine stammered, her face draining of color. What are you talking about? I pulled my phone out of my fishing vest pocket. I tapped the screen. I connected it to the small Bluetooth speaker I had left on the table. I have a recording. I think you all need to hear, I said. I pressed play. The sound was crystal clear. It was the recording of them in the kitchen last night, the recording I had made while standing in the laundry room, combined with the text messages I had read aloud to my lawyer to transcribe. But then I played the audio from the nursing home inquiry call Catherine had made 3 days ago, which I had retrieved from the cloud server. Catherine's voice filled the empty kitchen. Yes, Dr. Evans, I really think it is early onset dementia. He is becoming aggressive. I need to get power of attorney as soon as possible. Once the wedding is over, we want to transfer him to Shady Acres. We need the cheapest room available. He won't know the difference. We just need him out of the house so we can liquidate the assets. Then Madison's voice. Just make sure he signs the checks first, Mom. I don't want to be stuck with the bill. Then Tyler's voice. The old man is clueless. Once he is locked up, we sell the house. 2.4 million split 3 ways. That is the plan. I let the recording play until the end. I let the silence that followed stretch out until it was unbearable. I looked at Tyler. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at Catherine with an expression of pure horror. But it wasn't moral horror. It was the horror of a man realizing he had bet on a losing horse. "You were going to commit him," Tyler whispered. He looked at Madison. "You told me he was sick. You told me the doctors recommended it. You didn't tell me it was a scam to steal the house." Madison grabbed Tyler's arm. "Tyler, listen to me. It wasn't like that. We were worried about his future." "Get off me," Tyler shouted, shoving her away. He looked around the empty room. He looked at the sold sign visible through the window. He looked at the divorce papers. He did the math. "You have nothing," he said. He wasn't yelling anymore. His voice was cold and detached, the voice of a Cabot protecting his reputation. "The house is sold. The money is gone. The father is gone. And you are a fraud." "Tyler, please." Madison cried, tears streaming down her face. "We still have the wedding. We can figure this out. My real dad is coming. Your real dad." Tyler laughed. A bitter, ugly laugh. "You mean the deadbeat? What is he going to do?" "Pay for the honeymoon." "Madison, look around you. This is a crime scene. Your mother tried to defraud her husband. Do you think my family wants to be associated with this? Do you think the Cabots want a daughter-in-law whose mother is about to be investigated for elder abuse and conspiracy?" He adjusted his wetsuit jacket. He smoothed his hair. "The wedding is off, Madison," he said. "No," Madison screamed. She fell to her knees, grabbing at his legs. "You can't. The guests are coming." "Tell them to turn around," Tyler said. He kicked his leg free from her grip. "And don't contact me. My lawyer will be in touch to get the ring back." He turned to me. He didn't apologize. He didn't look ashamed. He just nodded one businessman to another, acknowledging a superior maneuver. "You played a good hand, Robert," he said. Then he walked out. I watched him go. I watched him walk out the back door through the mud and disappear around the side of the house. Madison was curled in a ball on the floor, sobbing into the cold hardwood. Her white robe was ruined. Her life was ruined. Catherine stood by the plastic table. She wasn't crying. She was staring at the divorce papers. She looked up at me. Her eyes were empty. "Robert," she whispered. "We can fix this. I can explain. It was just talk. We were just venting. Please." "Where are we supposed to go? We have nowhere to go." I picked up the envelope. I took out one last piece of paper. "I anticipated that," I said. I placed a small brochure on the table. It was a glossy pamphlet with a picture of a generic sterile building on the front. "Shady Acres," I read the title aloud. "I made a reservation for you, Catherine," I said. "Not for a room, but for a job interview. They are hiring cleaning staff, minimum wage, room and board included." I walked to the back door. I stopped and looked at them one last time. The crying girl on the floor. The broken woman at the table. "You wanted me to be just Robert," I said. "Well, I am just Robert. And Robert is going fishing." I walked out into the rain. I didn't lock the door behind me. There was nothing left inside to steal. 6 months. That is how long it has been since I walked out of the back door of my house in the rain, leaving my ex-wife and her daughter standing in the wreckage of their own greed. 6 months since I drove my truck across the country, watching the landscape change from the gray, weeping skies of Seattle to the endless, brilliant blue of the Florida Keys. I am sitting on the stern of my boat now. It is a 25-foot Grady white center console. I bought it with cash the day I arrived in Marathon. I named her the Second Chance. The hull is white, the upholstery is clean, and the engine hums with a reliability that my marriage never had. The sun is setting, painting the water in shades of purple and gold. And for the first time in 18 years, the silence around me doesn't feel empty. It feels peaceful. It feels like ownership. I took a sip of my beer. It was ice cold. The condensation dripped onto my hand, cooling skin that was tanned and weathered from months of fishing. I wasn't wearing a watch. I didn't need to know what time it was. I didn't have a rehearsal dinner to pay for. I didn't have a tuition bill to settle. I didn't have a wife waiting to criticize my table manners. My phone sat on the cooler next to me. I usually keep it off, but today was the first of the month. That meant I had a scheduled call with Mr. Harland. Harland had called me an hour ago. He calls it the damage report. I told him I didn't need to know that I didn't care, but he insisted. He said it was important for closure. He said that sometimes you need to see the weeds dying to know that the garden is truly safe. So he told me. Catherine is living in a one-bedroom apartment in a complex near the airport. It is the kind of place where the walls are thin and the sirens never stop wailing. She isn't lunching at the country club anymore. The country club membership was in my name, and I canceled it the same day I sold the house. Without me to pay the dues, and without the social standing of the Caldwell estate, her friends, the women she tried so hard to impress, dropped her within a week. They smelled the poverty on her, Harland said, and they scattered like roaches when the lights turn on. She is working. Harland told me this with a hint of grim satisfaction in his voice. She found a job at a Walmart supercenter. She works the checkout line. I tried to picture it. Catherine, the woman who used to complain if the waiter poured the wine with the wrong hand, was now standing on her feet for 8 hours a day, wearing a blue vest scanning barcodes for people buying bulk toilet paper and frozen dinners. Harland said she is frantically trying to pay off the credit card debt she racked up in her own name after I cut off the supplementary cards. She is discovering that minimum wage doesn't cover the minimum payment on a lifestyle she can no longer afford. And Madison. The update on Madison was harder to hear, not because I felt sorry for her, but because it confirmed just how hollow she really was. Tyler didn't just leave her, he annihilated her. The Cabot family has lawyers that make Harland look like a kitten. They sued Madison for the return of the engagement ring, a 3-carat diamond that Tyler had bought. Madison tried to sell it to a pawn shop 2 days after the non-wedding to get cash, but the Cabots had already flagged the serial number. She was arrested for attempted sale of stolen property. The charges were dropped, but the humiliation wasn't. The story got out. A wedding guest angry about the cancellation leaked the entire saga to a local blog. Then it hit TikTok. They called her the Gold Digger Bride. There were videos of her crying in the mud videos of the sold sign on the gate. She became a meme. The influencer career she was trying to build evaporated overnight. Companies don't want to sponsor a girl who tried to defraud her stepfather and got evicted on her wedding day. She is living with a friend now, sleeping on a couch. She works part-time as a hostess at a chain restaurant. Harland said she tried to reach out to her biological father, Evan, the man she wanted to walk her down the aisle. Evan blocked her number when she asked him for rent money. He told her he wasn't an ATM. The irony was so thick I could taste it. I looked out at the horizon. The sun had dipped below the waterline. They were suffering. They were struggling. And I was sitting here drinking a $5 beer on a $70,000 boat, watching the pelicans dive for their dinner. I should have felt guilty. That is what we are taught, isn't it? To forgive, to be the bigger person. But I realized something out here on the water. I was the bigger person. I was the person who paid the bills for 18 years. I was the person who loved them when they were unlovable. Being the bigger person doesn't mean letting people destroy you. It means respecting yourself enough to walk away when the love is no longer served at the table. My phone buzzed against the plastic lid of the cooler. The vibration made a harsh sound in the quiet evening. I picked it up. It was a text message. The number was unfamiliar, probably a burner phone or a friend's phone because I had blocked her main number months ago, but I knew who it was. Daddy, please. I know you are angry, but I am scared. I have nowhere to go. The landlord is kicking me out on Friday. I just need $2,000. Just a loan. I promise I will pay you back. I miss you. Please, Daddy. It is your Maddie. I stared at the screen. Daddy. She hadn't called me that since she was 12. For 16 years, I was Robert. I was the bank. I was the embarrassing old man. Now, suddenly, when this world was cold and the rent was due, I was Daddy again. I read the words, "I will pay you back." I remembered the tuition, the car, the nose job, the wedding deposits, the $482,000. I remembered the group chat. Thanks for the money, loser. I felt a ghost of the old Robert rise up inside me. The Robert who wanted to fix things. The Robert who couldn't stand to see a child cry. It would be so easy to transfer the money. I had plenty of it. My investments from the house sale were performing well. $2,000 was nothing to me now. But then I looked at my hands. They were healing. The calluses were still there, but the stress tremors were gone. I looked at the boat. I looked at the peace I had built. If I sent that money, I wouldn't be helping her. I would be buying my way back into the cage. I would be teaching her that manipulation works. I would be validating the lie that I was only useful when I was paying. She didn't miss me. She missed the safety net. She missed the ATM. I took a sip of beer. I let the bubbles fizz on my tongue. I didn't type a reply. I didn't type, "I told you so." I didn't type, "Ask Evan." I didn't type, "You are a grown woman, figure it out." Any response would be fuel. Any response would keep the door open a crack. And I had welded that door shut. I tapped the 3 dots in the corner of the screen. I selected block contact. I confirmed it. The message disappeared from my notifications. The phone went silent. I tossed the phone onto the padded bench seat behind me. It landed with a soft thud. I stood up and walked to the rod holder. My fishing line was in the water, trailing behind the boat in the gentle current. Suddenly, the rod tip jerked. Then it bowed down, heavy and deep. The reel screamed as the line peeled out. It was a big one. A grouper, maybe. Or a snapper. I grabbed the rod. I felt the weight of the fish fighting on the other end. It was strong. It was alive. It was a battle. I grinned. I braced my legs against the gunwale and started to reel. This was real. This struggle between man and nature, this was honest. The fish wasn't trying to manipulate me. It wasn't lying to me. It was just trying to survive, and I was trying to catch dinner. I cranked the handle. My muscles burned. It felt good. It felt like work. "I am Robert Caldwell," I said to the empty ocean, my voice strong over the sound of the wind. "I am 75 years old, and I am just getting started." I pulled back on the rod, feeling the power of the fish, feeling the power of my own life returning to me, one turn of the reel at a time. The sun was gone now, but the stars were coming out. Millions of them. They were bright and clear, unpolluted by the city lights, unclouded by the lies of a false family. I had lost a wife. I had lost a daughter. I had lost a house. But as I looked up at that infinite sky reeling in my catch, I realized I had found the one thing money could never buy. I had found myself. And let me tell you folks, the catch of the day tastes a hell of a lot better when you clean it yourself. Thank you for listening to my story. If you have ever had to cut toxic family out of your life to save your own soul, I want you to hit that like button right now. Don't be ashamed. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is say goodbye. And if you want to hear more stories about people standing up for themselves, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I have a lot of time on this boat, and I have a lot more stories to tell. Let me know in the comments. Do you think I should have sent the money? Or did I do the right thing by blocking her? I read every single comment. Until next time, keep your lines tight and your boundaries tighter. This is Robert signing off from the Second Chance.